I woke up screaming, not because of a dream, not because of pain, but because my lungs forgot what air was. The cryopod hissed open, flooding my face with sterile, recycled oxygen and freezer-burned staleness. My body shivered violently, skin clinging to the remnants of cryogel like molasses in zero-G. Neural lines flickered against my skull, trying to reconnect with a brain that had been offline for how long? I gagged and heaved, puking up bile and cold foam onto the grated floor. Vitals stable. A dry automated voice buzzed inside the pod. Subject, Sergeant Eric Rourke. Status, alive. Yeah, no kidding. The lights were dim. Blue auxiliary strips pulsed along the curved walls. This wasn't a military ship, not Terran, at least. The architecture was too tall, too narrow, like everything was built for someone with 3 knees and no appreciation for symmetry. Panels were carved with swirling geometric patterns, not etched, but grown. I tried to stand. My knees buckled, slamming me down like a sack of bricks. The metal grated beneath me groaned. Something moved in the room. I froze, muscles tensing out of instinct. Training took over before my rational mind caught up. First rule: when in an unknown environment, assume hostile contact. Second rule: don't wait to get shot at. Third rule: stay alive long enough to break both rules if necessary. I rolled, grabbing a sharp length of disconnected pipe from the cryopod's maintenance cradle. It wasn't a weapon, but it could be. From the far end of the room, a bulbous shape loomed, 8 feet tall, armor like overlapping scales. For arms, 2 with claws, the others ending in strange, triple-jointed manipulators. A bulbous head with black compound eyes blinked at me, not blinking, focusing. Alien. It barked something in a language that sounded like wet gravel in a blender. My pod's linguistic chip crackled in my brain, struggling to translate. Hostile unit. Active. Weapon detected. Proceeding with subjugation. It moved fast. I moved faster. The pipe connected with the thing's knee, if it had a knee. It let out a shriek and stumbled. I shoved the pipe under what looked like a breathing joint and twisted with all my cryoshocked strength. Something snapped. It spasmed, collapsing in a twitching heap. Combat action locked. The cryopod AI noted dispassionately behind me. Reflex restoration at 67%. Thanks for the update, I muttered. I grabbed the creature's belt, more a mesh of gear pouches, and found a sidearm that hummed ominously when touched. Smooth surface, no trigger, heat-based maybe. I gritted my teeth and aimed it at the door as it slid open. 2 more figures entered. I didn't wait. 1 bolt, 2 bolts. The room filled with ozone and burning hair. Both dropped, screeching. I stood over them, breath heaving, pulse thundering like a war drum. What the hell was going on? The scavenger ship was a graveyard. After leaving the cryo bay, I found myself moving through shadowed halls riddled with damaged walls and leaking coolant. Every bulkhead was patched with foreign materials, scavenged parts, jury-rigged wiring, and chunks of what I recognized as Terran ship plating. They'd been looting our war wrecks. The implication hit me harder than the cryo sickness. If they were salvaging Terran military pods, then the war had ended badly, and I was the last unopened can on the shelf. I found a cracked view screen and accessed the system. The interface didn't speak Terran code, but my neural implants did the heavy lifting. Stellar drift, ship's route, orbital maps. The stars didn't match anything I remembered. That was when I saw the date, 2813. Almost 500 years since I was frozen. Jesus, I whispered. My voice sounded like someone else's. Dry, hollow. We lost, didn't we? A scavenger log confirmed it. Earth destroyed. Luna shattered. The colonies? Glassed or abandoned. No Terran signals in over 4 centuries. Humanity wasn't just defeated. We were gone. Extinct. My knees gave out again, and this time I didn't fight it. I sank to the cold floor, gripping my skull. I thought of my squad. Sergeant Patel, Corporal Mendez, Private Styx Halvorsen. We were a rapid response unit. Drop shock infantry. Last I remembered, we were ordered into cryo during a last-ditch fallback protocol called Operation Vault. Now I was the only one left. They didn't expect me to wake up. That much was clear from the logs. The scavengers had been trying to breach my pod's core for weeks. One even noted how annoyingly resilient human pods were. Damn right. Designed to survive orbital strikes, EMPs, and idiot alien techs. One log entry caught my eye. Pod subject contains residual life. Terran military designation. Neural augments detected. Consider selling to Dominion Inquisitorium for high reward. Dangerous. Proceed with caution. I stared at the message. Dominion. That name hadn't been on any map before the war. Now it was plastered across every navigational node I accessed. One government, one empire, one boot, pressing down on a galaxy too afraid to resist. I found the scavenger captain's quarters. No captain inside, just another corpse. Burned, possibly shot. My work. Maybe. Or another's. I scavenged body armor that sort of fit and strapped the alien sidearm to my hip. I snagged a sharp blade, basically a knife that hummed with kinetic vibration. Nasty stuff. Then I found the room that changed everything. A vault. Inside, Terran relics. Not just junk, weapons, artifacts, metals, even an old Earth flag. Tattered, faded, still proud. I stood before it, every hair on my body standing up. I saluted. The motion felt awkward after 500 years, but I meant it. We were never meant to vanish like this. The ship started moving. Someone was still alive, or something had triggered an autopilot. I climbed toward the bridge, weaving past alien corpses and destroyed drones. The closer I got, the more resistance I encountered, some kind of security units, round and wheeled with plasma darts. I burned through them with the scavenged weapon, learning how it pulsed and surged. Primitive compared to Terran tech, but it worked. When I reached the bridge, I was met by a tiny, panicked-looking creature, barely waist-high, with 4 eyes and a stack of data pads clutched in trembling arms. It didn't scream. It didn't fight. It spoke. You're one of them. It stammered in a surprisingly high-pitched, heavily accented Terran dialect. Human, real human, carbon-based, aggressive neural profile. Oh gods, I'm going to die. Relax, I said. I kept the weapon lowered. Not unless you try to kill me, or sell me, or lie. I wouldn't dream of it. I'm just a technician, a salvager, junior rank, barely paid. It scurried behind a console, still staring. Do you even know what year it is? The galaxy thinks your species is legend. Boogeymen. Ghosts. I snorted. Seems the ghost just punched your bosses in the face. He blinked. You don't get it. The Dominion will come looking. If they know you're awake. They don't. They will. And when they do, they won't send a diplomat. They'll send an erasure fleet. Let them. I growled. Maybe they'll learn what a pissed-off human looks like. He whimpered. I pointed at the NAV console. Where's the nearest planet? Somewhere I can get answers. Gear. Fuel. The technician hesitated, then pulled up a star chart. A small moon outpost. Dominion controlled, but lightly staffed. Mining. Low traffic. Perfect. I grabbed a fresh power cell, slid it into the sidearm, and stared at my reflection in the console. Hair like frostbitten iron. Eyes bloodshot. Face hollow. Rage simmering just beneath the skin. I'm taking the ship, I said. You're helping me pilot it. Or you can leave now. He shook his head rapidly. I'll help. I swear. I don't want to die. Not today. I smiled. First one in centuries. Smart. As the stars stretched into faster-than-light blur, I finally exhaled. I was alone, but not powerless. Not forgotten. And if this Dominion wanted a reminder of what humanity really was, what we were forged to be in the fires of war, then so be it. Time to remind the galaxy what it means to make a ghost angry. The hum of the scavenger ship's engine was a lullaby I hadn't heard in centuries. I stared out the viewport at the swirl of stars, trying to force my mind to focus. It was like waking in a nightmare. Everything familiar was twisted, foreign, broken. The technician, who I now learned was called Zik, was busy at the controls, mumbling to himself in a mix of broken Terran and whatever language his species spoke natively. I didn't trust him fully, but I needed him, desperately. If I was going to survive in this alien hellscape, I needed allies, even ones with more eyes than sense. I tapped the console, pulling up what data I could access. Maps, logs, military databases. The data was fragmented, encrypted, and often corrupted by time and war, but it painted a grim picture. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was gone, erased, not just from the stars, but from history itself. The end of a legend. I found an archived broadcast, scratched and degraded, but unmistakably human. The voice was calm, but cracked with desperation. To all Terran survivors, this is Admiral Kessler of the Earth Defense Fleet. We've suffered catastrophic losses. The Dominion forces overwhelmed our defenses. Earth is lost. We are activating Operation Vault. All remaining personnel are to enter cryosleep and await rescue. Humanity's survival depends on silence and time. I felt a bitter lump in my throat. 5 centuries of silence. 5 centuries of waiting to be found. Except no one was coming. The Dominion was thorough. They wiped our homeworld, shattered our moon, and erased the colonies. Not a single distress call had been answered. Not a single rescue mission sent. We were left to die, a galaxy without us. I pulled up stellar charts of what remained of human space. Nothing. Just empty shadows where bright colonies used to burn. Even the systems once ruled by Earth's Commonwealth were silent or rebranded under Dominion control. I looked at the name Dominion more closely. It wasn't just a name. It was a warning. The Dominion was a sprawling empire built on conquest, control, and fear. They'd assimilated dozens of species, some willingly, most by force. Their fleet was massive, their technology ruthless. But the strangest thing was how little anyone resisted. I found logs from alien races who had tried. All had failed. The resistance myth. Zik tapped me on the shoulder, breaking my spiral. There, he said, pointing to a blinking beacon on the star map. Mining colony on Epsilon 7 Moon. Dominion controlled, but mostly independent miners and smugglers. If you want answers, start there. I narrowed my eyes. Answers or trouble? Both. But that's all you have. I nodded. Sometimes, survival meant diving headfirst into trouble. A moon of shadows. The approach to Epsilon 7 was like a bad memory of Earth's industrial decay. The colony clung to the gray, cratered moon like a rusted scar. The station was old, patched, and clearly not Dominion's favorite project. It was a mix of mining rigs, cargo docks, and smuggler outposts. A perfect place to disappear or start a revolution. I docked the scavenger ship quietly and slipped inside. Faces in the dark. The station was a hive of nervous energy. Alien miners, smuggler gangs, and a few humans, most with worn faces and wary eyes. I felt the weight of their stares. I was an anomaly, a relic, a myth. They whispered, Terran, the last human, a walking weapon. Their eyes flicked between me and my weapons. Finding the resistance, I found a dimly lit bar, a place where rumors ran faster than the cheap synth alcohol. There, I met Captain Kayla, a tall woman with cybernetic arms and eyes that had seen too many wars. You're the human? She asked, sizing me up like prey. I'm what's left, I said. I need to know what happened, what we lost, and how to fight back. She laughed, bitter and sharp. Fight back? You're a ghost story, a bedtime tale to scare kids. I leaned forward. Ghosts don't stay buried, not when there's blood to spill. The weight of memory. Kayla told me stories, the colony's history, the Dominion's rise, the slow chokehold across the galaxy. They wiped us out like vermin, she said, but we survived by hiding, sabotage, smuggling supplies to others. The resistance was fractured, desperate, and outgunned, but it was alive, and they wanted a leader. The spark of rage. I felt something long buried stir inside me. Rage, not blind fury, not desperation. Purpose. I wasn't just fighting to survive. I was fighting to reclaim, to remind the galaxy why humanity had once ruled stars. A message from the past. Kayla handed me a data chip. This was found in an old Dominion outpost, a fragment of Terran code. You might want to see it. Back in my quarters, I decrypted it. It was a message, a distress signal, an SOS from Earth. 500 years old, and still burning with hope. The decision. I sat alone, staring at the flickering message. The galaxy had written us off, but I hadn't forgotten. I was the last Terran soldier, and I was going to make them remember. The stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks. The ship hummed with new purpose. This was no longer survival. This was war. The message was crackling through my neural implant like a whisper from a ghost. 5 centuries old, buried deep in Dominion archives. Yet it was alive, a faint pulse in the dark. I sat alone in the dim glow of the scavenger ship's quarters, the data chip spinning in my hands. Its surface shimmered with faint Terran inscriptions, barely legible. I replayed the recording again and again, each time hoping for more clarity, more answers. Each time, it dragged me deeper into a past that had been erased. The voice from the void. The voice was unmistakably human, female, calm but strained, speaking into a battered comm unit. It began with a soft greeting, almost tender in contrast to the cold steel surroundings. If you are receiving this, then all hope is not lost. I am Commander Lydia Voss of the Earth Defense Fleet. To any survivor, human or ally, please heed this message. The Dominion is not invincible. We are scattered, but we are not broken. This signal carries the coordinates of the last hidden Terran stronghold, Fort Eden. Find it, reclaim it. Remember who we are. I felt a chill. The name Fort Eden was unfamiliar, but the desperation in Lydia's voice cut through the silence like a blade. a last-ditch attempt to preserve hope. The recording ended abruptly, cut off by static and then silence. The weight of hope. I stared at the ship's scratched viewport as stars streaked by in faster-than-light travel. Fort Eden, a sanctuary, a fortress holding the last embers of humanity's resistance. If the message was true, if the stronghold still existed, then I wasn't alone. I wasn't the last. This was a chance, maybe the only chance, to turn the tide. Preparing for the hunt, I turned to Zik, who was nervously fidgeting at the console, his 4 eyes darting between the maps and my unreadable expression. Fort Eden, do you know where it is? He shook his head. No one does. At least, not for sure. The Dominion erased it from all public records. If it's out there, it's a ghost, a myth even among their own. I slammed my fist down on the console. Then we're going to find the ghost. He looked startled. You don't understand what you're asking. Searching for Fort Eden is like walking into a hornet's nest. Dominion patrols, automated defense networks, intelligence agents everywhere. They will kill anyone looking for it. Good, I said with a grim smile. That means they fear it. Allies in the shadows. Before setting course for the coordinates partially embedded in the signal, I knew I couldn't do this alone. The Epsilon 7 colony had its share of misfits and mercenaries, but I needed more. Someone who knew how to navigate the Dominion's deadly politics and security. Kayla, the resistance leader, was the obvious choice. Her reputation as a fierce warrior and cunning strategist preceded her. I sent a secure message requesting a meeting. The meeting. Kayla's ship was a fortress of scavenged weapons and hardened crew, docked discreetly in the colony's shadowed bay. She greeted me with a wary nod. You want to chase legends, soldier? You realize that means dragging the whole resistance into a slaughter. I looked her in the eye. I'm not asking, I'm telling. Fort Eden exists, and it's the key to humanity's future. Either we find it, or we die trying. Her cybernetic arms gleamed under the station's lights as she folded them. You're either brave or insane. Maybe both. Fine, you've got my attention. Gathering intel. Kayla's contacts were scattered throughout the fringe systems. Smugglers, spies, former Dominion officers who'd turned coat. Over the next few days, we sifted through rumors, stolen data caches, and half-truths. One name came up repeatedly. Elias Varn, a former Dominion intelligence officer turned rogue. Legend said he had once been stationed near the Outer Rim, guarding classified routes linked to Terran remnants. He was our best lead. The hunt for Elias. Tracking Varn was like chasing shadows. Dominion forces had long hunted him, and he was a ghost among ghosts, slipping between identities, safe houses, and forged alliances. Eventually, we found a trace in a derelict outpost on the edge of a forgotten system. We landed under the guise of traders and mercenaries. The air was thick with tension and dust. Elias Varn. He was nothing like I expected. Older, grizzled, with haunted eyes that reflected a lifetime of betrayal. He didn't greet us with open arms. You're Terran, he said bluntly, scanning me like a specimen. Impossible. No one wakes from Operation Vault. I told him the truth. The cryopod, the scavenger ship, the Dominion's destruction of Earth. He listened in silence. After a long pause, he said, Fort Eden isn't just a stronghold. It's a sanctuary, a vault of Terran secrets, weapons, technology, even data on how to fight the Dominion. But it's locked down tight. Dominion forces guard it with their lives, and so do those who chose to stay behind. He handed me a data chip. This is what you need. Coordinates, access codes, a list of allies and enemies. But be warned, getting there won't be easy. The Dominion calls it the Iron Crucible for a reason. The Iron Crucible. The journey to Fort Eden was perilous. We had to navigate through Dominion patrol zones, stealth drones, and the remnants of war zones littered with wreckage and radiation. Every star system we passed was a reminder of what we lost. Into the darkness, our ship slipped through the void, evading Dominion scans like shadows dancing on the edge of a blade. Zik worked tirelessly at the helm, his multiple eyes scanning for threats, rerouting power, and keeping us alive. Kayla and I planned every step. I kept replaying Commander Voss's message, letting it fuel the fire in my gut. The first encounter. We weren't prepared for the ambush. A Dominion hunter squadron dropped out of hyperspace, plasma bolts streaking toward us. The battle was brutal and fast. Our scavenger ship wasn't a warship, but we fought with desperation and cunning. Zik managed to jam their targeting systems briefly, and Kayla took control of our defensive turrets. Survival. We escaped, but just barely. Our ship limped into a nearby asteroid field for cover. I could feel the weight of the fight settling in my bones. This wasn't just a mission. It was a war for humanity's soul, a new purpose. In the silence that followed, I looked around at my ragtag crew. Zik, the jittery technician, Kayla, the battle-hardened leader, and me, the last soldier from a forgotten Earth. We were bound by one thing: hope. The hope that Fort Eden wasn't just a myth, that somewhere out there, humanity still had a chance. As the stars flickered on the viewport, I whispered a vow to the ghosts of my past. I will find Fort Eden. I will bring humanity back. And if the Dominion thought they'd buried us forever, they were dead wrong. The moment we slipped out of hyperspace, the sight hit me like a punch to the gut. Fort Eden was real, and it was far more than a ruined relic. It was a fortress carved into an asteroid, a fortress alive with the hum of ancient but potent technology. For centuries, I had carried the weight of Earth's loss, imagining all that was left was dust and silence. But here, carved from the darkness of space, was a beacon, a final stand, a spark in the void. First glimpse. Our ship's sensors flickered as the asteroid loomed larger on the screen. Jagged metal plates encased the rock like armor, with blinking lights and gun turrets poking through vents and hangars. Kayla's voice was tense but awed. This is more than just a base. This is a legacy. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening on the console. A legacy we have to protect or revive. The Dominion didn't know about this place, or at least, not fully. That was the point. A hidden vault of Terran resistance, buried deep and shielded with old-world tech nobody else had cracked. The approach. Our ship moved cautiously toward the docking bay. Automated turrets scanned the incoming vessel, but a signal from the data chip we'd recovered allowed us safe passage for now. Zik's hands flew over the controls. Hull integrity holding. Docking sequence initiated. The airlock hissed open. I stepped into the corridor, the cold metallic walls humming with latent power. This was no abandoned facility. The echoes of Earth. The interior was a strange blend of advanced tech and relics from a world long gone. Photographs of cities drowned in sunlight, holograms of smiling faces, a library of digital archives preserved in crystalline storage. I felt a lump in my throat. These were ghosts of a past I barely remembered but had fought so hard to save. Kayla and I led the way through the labyrinthine halls. Every corner told a story of hope, sacrifice, and a stubborn refusal to disappear. The survivors. As we ventured deeper, we found signs of life. Small teams of survivors, soldiers, scientists, engineers, were awake, alive, and wary. They looked at me with disbelief, as if I were a myth come to life. One woman approached, her eyes sharp and calculating. "You're the soldier from the signal," she said. "We've been waiting for you." Her name was Commander Alara, and she was the heart of Fort Eden's resistance. The heart of the resistance. Alara showed me the command center, a sprawling nexus of screens, maps, and communication arrays. Here, the remnants of humanity planned their next move. "We've been holding Fort Eden for generations," she explained. "The Dominion thought we were extinct. They underestimated us." She pulled up a star map showing Dominion territories, supply routes, and patrols. "We're small, scattered, but we have something they don't acknowledge. Weapons forged in the old wars. Technology that can turn the tide." The plan. We sat down to strategize. Alara laid out the truth. The Dominion was tightening its grip, but cracks were appearing in their empire. Systems were rising in rebellion, and the Dominion was stretched thin. "We can strike," she said. "If we coordinate with other resistance cells, disrupt Dominion supply lines, and reclaim key systems, we can rebuild." I felt the fire in her words, the same fire I'd buried deep inside. Unearthing the past. During my stay, I explored Fort Eden's archives. What I found was staggering. Old war footage, detailed reports on Dominion weaponry, and most importantly, secrets about Terran genetic enhancements developed before the fall. The Terran soldiers of old weren't just fighters. They were engineered for resilience, adaptability, and strategy, traits the Dominion feared most. Reawakening the warrior. I volunteered for the genetic enhancement program. It was risky, painful, but necessary. In a sterile chamber, I underwent treatments that coursed through my veins like fire and ice. When it was over, I felt stronger, sharper, faster. I was becoming the soldier I was meant to be, not just a survivor, but a weapon of humanity's revival. Bonds forged in fire. Kayla and I grew close in the crucible of Fort Eden. She was fierce, loyal, and fiercely protective of her crew. We trained side by side, preparing for the battles to come. Zik, ever the reluctant technician, surprised us all with his ingenuity, hacking Dominion systems, repurposing weapons, and keeping us one step ahead. Shadows in the walls, but not all was well. Whispers of betrayal echoed through the halls. Saboteurs, spies, Dominion sympathizers hidden among the survivors. Paranoia crept in. I found myself questioning everyone, even those closest to me. A test of trust. One night, a sabotage attempt nearly destroyed the power grid. The station plunged into darkness, alarms blared. We caught the saboteur, a scientist who'd been feeding data to the Dominion. The betrayal cut deep, but it steeled our resolve. Preparing for war, Fort Eden was no longer just a sanctuary. It was a fortress of hope, a beacon for all those who refused to accept humanity's extinction. We would fight, we would reclaim the stars, and I would lead. The cold metal of the command chair pressed against my back as I stared at the star map. Beyond the lights and shadows, the galaxy waited, waiting for humanity to rise again. The command center was alive with movement and tension. I sat at the head of the table, staring down at the digital star map pulsing beneath my fingertips. Every blinking light represented a Dominion stronghold, a supply route, or a patrol fleet, all vulnerable, all within our reach. This was it, our chance to take the fight to the Dominion, to show them humanity wasn't broken, that we were still here, still hungry for freedom. The weight of command. I felt the weight of responsibility like a physical burden. For years, I'd survived as a soldier and scavenger, but now I was a leader, not just of a crew, but of a movement. Kayla stood beside me, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "You ready for this?" she asked. I nodded. No one said it would be easy. The plan was simple in theory, brutal in execution. We would hit a Dominion supply convoy, heavily guarded, but vulnerable, destroy it, and we would cripple their logistics for months. Give hope to resistance cells across the sectors. Preparing the fleet. Fort Eden's docking bays bustled as we prepared our ships. Old freighters retrofitted with weapons, stealth tech, and cargo holds filled with explosives. Zik was in his element, fine-tuning the electronic warfare systems, jamming their sensors, scrambling their communications. He said with a rare smile, "We'll be ghosts." The briefing. In the dim glow of the command room, I addressed the assembled pilots and soldiers. "This is more than a raid. It's a message." I paused, locking eyes with each of them. "We strike fast, we hit hard, and we disappear. No heroics, no mistakes." The room was silent, the air thick with anticipation. Into the void, our fleet slipped out from Fort Eden's shadow, a ghostly formation slicing through the void. I sat in the cockpit of the lead ship, scanning the darkness ahead. Stealth systems online, Zik's voice crackled through comms. The convoy was approaching, slow-moving, laden with supplies and escorted by Dominion fighters. The ambush. As we neared the convoy, the tension was electric. "Wait for my mark," I ordered. Our ships dispersed into ambush positions behind asteroids and debris fields. When I gave the signal, hell broke loose. Chaos and fire. Explosions lit the void as we struck. Missiles tore through the convoy's hulls. Plasma cannons raked the escort fighters. The Dominion scrambled to respond, but we were faster, smarter. Zik's jamming kept their sensors blind, while Kayla coordinated our maneuvers with ruthless precision. The turning point. Amidst the chaos, a Dominion flagship emerged, larger, heavily armored, a symbol of their might. It opened fire, targeting my ship. Alarms blared as plasma bolts slammed into the hull. I gritted my teeth, pushing the ship to its limits. The flagship pursued us relentlessly. We weaved through the debris, trading fire. I knew we couldn't outgun it, but we could outthink it. I ordered a risky move, a dive into a dense asteroid cluster. Survival in the cluster. The flagship hesitated, reluctant to follow into the maze. We used the terrain to our advantage, firing from cover. Zik deployed decoys and sensor ghosts, confusing their targeting systems. Slowly, we chipped away at the flagship's defenses. Victory and loss. Finally, a lucky shot hit the flagship's reactor. A massive explosion rocked the convoy, destroying the flagship and scattering the survivors. But the cost was high. 2 of our ships were lost, and several crew members wounded. The aftermath. Back at Fort Eden, The mood was somber but hopeful. We dealt a serious blow to the Dominion's supply lines. But the war was far from over. A message sent. The victory sent ripples through the galaxy. Resistance cells responded with renewed vigor. The Dominion tightened its grip, but fear was spreading. Reflections. Alone in my quarters, I stared at the stars outside. We had struck the first blow, but the fight ahead would demand everything we had and more. The price of war. I thought of the friends lost, the battles yet to come, but also of the hope we'd ignited. Fort Eden was no longer just a sanctuary. It was the heart of a rebellion, and I was ready to lead it. The aftermath of our first strike against the Dominion left us both exhilarated and exposed. The victory was undeniable, a statement carved into the very fabric of the galaxy, but it also painted a target on our backs. We had rattled the Dominion's iron grip, and their response would be swift and ruthless. Fort Eden buzzed with activity, a hive of preparation and anticipation, but also undercurrents of tension and suspicion. In the chaos of resistance, allies and enemies alike can be disguised in familiar faces. Trust became our most precious and dangerous currency. The arrival. The comms terminal buzzed sharply one morning, breaking the relative quiet of the command center. Kayla was first to notice, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the incoming encrypted signal. Incoming message, she said, her voice cautious. Unregistered transmission. High priority. I tapped a few controls, bringing the video feed to life. A grizzled man with a scar running down his cheek appeared on the screen. His eyes were hard, but there was a flicker of urgency. I am Commander Ryan of the Orion Collective, he said, his voice steady but forceful. We've been watching your operation. That strike against the Dominion was impressive, reckless, but effective. We want a Hawk Alliance. The Orion Collective. I leaned back in my chair, studying Ryan's face. The Orion Collective was a loose coalition of former colonies and mercenary factions, not exactly saints, but formidable fighters who had carved out a space beyond Dominion control. We don't trust easily, I replied, meeting his gaze through the screen. What's in it for you? Ryan's eyes flickered. Survival. We want to push the Dominion back, but we lack the unity and resources you seem to have. Kayla exchanged a glance with me. Their fleet is small, but they control key jump points. If we cooperate, we can cut off Dominion reinforcements. Terms of alliance. Negotiations stretched late into the night. Trust wasn't granted. It was negotiated, tested, and weighed against our own precarious position. Ryan's terms were clear: shared intelligence, coordinated strikes, and mutual defense. But his price was steep. The collective demanded access to some of our technology and supplies, resources we could barely afford to spare. Still, the opportunity to expand our reach and strike harder was too valuable to ignore. Old wounds. Amid the talks, whispers spread through Fort Eden, rumors of betrayal and Dominion sympathizers lurking in the shadows. One afternoon, I was summoned to the security wing. Commander Alara awaited me, grim-faced. We caught another informant, she said. This one was passing coordinates to Dominion patrols. My stomach twisted. The betrayal wasn't just a threat. It was a cancer. Can we trust our allies? I asked. Alara shook her head. We have to be vigilant. The Dominion's reach is deep, testing loyalties. The new alliance with the Orion Collective brought both hope and paranoia. We shared missions, exchanged intel, but every interaction was tinged with suspicion. Kayla voiced her concerns bluntly one evening as we reviewed plans. They're not like us, she said. Their methods are ruthless. We need to watch them. I nodded. Trust is earned, not given. But we can't afford to fight alone. A fragile partnership. Our first joint operation tested the alliance's strength. We targeted a Dominion fuel depot critical to their fleet's mobility. The collective brought fighters skilled in hit-and-run tactics. We provided the precision strikes. The attack was swift and devastating, crippling the depot and cutting off Dominion forces in the sector. The cost of victory. But victory came with a price. During the assault, a squad of collective fighters disobeyed orders, engaging in looting and executions of prisoners. The brutality shocked our crews, shaking the fragile trust we'd built. I confronted Ryan after the mission. Our soldiers don't operate like that, I said. If we're to fight together, we need discipline. Ryan's eyes darkened. We do what we must to survive. Divisions within. Back at Fort Eden, tension simmered. Some of our own questioned the alliance, fearing we were becoming what we hated. Others argued pragmatism, that survival meant compromises. I found myself torn between the idealism I'd clung to and the brutal reality of war. A new threat emerges. Amid this turmoil, new intelligence arrived. Dominion forces were mobilizing a massive counteroffensive targeting Fort Eden itself. Alara gathered us in the command center. They know where we are. They're coming. The walls seemed to close in. Our sanctuary was about to become a battlefield, preparing for the siege. Every moment counted. We scrambled defenses, reinforced shields, and mobilized troops. The combined forces of Fort Eden and the Orion Collective worked side by side, though the tension was palpable. Kayla and I coordinated patrols and countermeasures, determined to hold the line. Trust tested in fire. As Dominion ships darkened the skies above Fort Eden, the true test of our fragile alliance began. In the heat of battle, loyalties were laid bare. The collective fought fiercely, their merciless tactics clashing with our more measured approach. But when it mattered most, they stood with us, unwavering. The battle for Fort Eden. The siege was brutal. Missiles streaked across the void, plasma fire tore through armor, and the ground trembled with explosions. I led a squadron into the thick of it, fighting alongside Kayla and the collective's best. Every inch of Fort Eden's defenses was tested. The cost of survival. Casualties mounted. Friends fell. Ships were lost. But the fortress held. We repelled the Dominion assault, but at a great cost. The battle forged bonds between us and scars that would not heal easily. Aftermath and resolve. In the quiet aftermath, we mourned the lost and tended the wounded. The alliance with the Orion Collective had survived its first trial, but the path ahead was uncertain. I stood on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Allies and enemies were not always clear. But one thing was certain. Humanity's fight for freedom was just beginning. The siege had ended, but the battle within Fort Eden was far from over. The scars of combat were still fresh, burn marks on the walls, shattered consoles, and the silent absence of comrades whose laughter once filled these halls. Yet, a different kind of wound had begun to fester, one that no plasma cannon or missile strike could heal. I sat alone in my quarters, the weight of command pressing on my shoulders like an anchor. The victory had come at a price, and now, in the uneasy silence, I felt the real war begin, the war for trust, unity, and survival from threats not just outside, but inside our own walls. The uneasy calm. The calm after the storm was a strange thing. The adrenaline drained, leaving behind a hollow ache. The halls of Fort Eden buzzed with activity, but beneath the surface, anxiety rippled through our ranks like a poison. Whispers followed me down corridors. Unseen eyes watched from shadows. Suspicion clung to every glance exchanged between crew members, like a silent accusation. Kayla noticed it too, her usual sharp gaze softer but shadowed with worry. "We're unraveling," she said quietly, as we reviewed reports in the command center. "The pressure is getting to everyone." I nodded. After the losses, the fear, people need something to hold on to. Uncovering the betrayal. It was Commander Alara who first brought the news that would shatter what little peace we had left. "We've intercepted a transmission," she said grimly during a briefing. "Encrypted, but our cryptographers cracked it. It's a message from within Fort Eden, coordinates, schedules, patrol routes. Someone is feeding intel to the Dominion." My stomach clenched. The threat wasn't just external anymore. It was within. Who? I demanded. Alara shook her head. "We don't know yet, but the leak has compromised our defenses several times. The hunt begins." The hunt for the traitor became our obsession. We tightened security protocols, questioned every crew member, sifted through logs and comms. But the deeper we dug, the more elusive the enemy became. Each clue seemed to lead to a dead end. Trust in fragments. Kayla and I split our teams, each tasked with rooting out the mole. It was hard to focus with paranoia creeping into every conversation. I caught myself doubting even the most loyal faces. Are we tearing ourselves apart? I wondered aloud to Kayla during a late-night strategy session. She gave a grim smile. Better now than too late. A shattered alliance. Meanwhile, the alliance with the Orion Collective strained under the pressure. Ryan's men grew restless, their harsh discipline fraying as frustration mounted. There were whispered complaints about our leadership, about softness and wasted resources. Kayla confronted Ryan in a tense meeting. "If we can't trust each other, this alliance falls apart," she warned. Ryan's eyes hardened. "Then we fight alone," the saboteur revealed. Just when hope seemed all but lost, a breakthrough came. A junior engineer named Mika stumbled into my office one evening, eyes wide with fear. I know who it is, she whispered. It's someone in logistics, someone no one suspects. We worked quickly and quietly, tracing suspicious activities in supply shipments and maintenance logs. The evidence pointed to someone close, someone with access to critical systems. Confrontation. We confronted the suspect in a secure chamber, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The accused was defiant at first, but the proof was undeniable. Under questioning, they revealed they'd been coerced by the Dominion, threats against family back on occupied worlds. The betrayal stung deeply, but it also reminded me of the brutal complexities of war, redemption, and resolve. Instead of execution, I made a choice that shocked many. The traitor would face justice, but also a chance to redeem themselves by helping us fight the Dominion from within. It was a gamble, trusting a broken enemy. But in war, there are no simple answers. Rebuilding trust. With the mole exposed, the atmosphere in Fort Eden shifted. Suspicion remained, but so did a renewed sense of purpose. Kayla and I doubled down on transparency, communication, and shared leadership. We started rebuilding not just defenses, but the bonds between our people. A whisper of hope. Amid the shadows, small sparks of hope began to shine. Resistance cells sent messages of support and solidarity. New volunteers arrived, eager to join the fight. The galaxy might still be a dangerous place, but humanity was refusing to fade quietly. The fight continues. As I looked out over Fort Eden's illuminated skyline that night, I knew the war wasn't just against the Dominion's armies. It was a fight for our very souls, for unity in the face of chaos, for the spirit that makes us human, and for the freedom we had only just begun to claim. The air in Fort Eden was thick with anticipation and unease. After the harrowing betrayal and the fragile mending of trust, we thought we had braced ourselves for the worst. But no amount of preparation could have readied us for what was coming. War is never static. It shifts like a living thing, unpredictable, ruthless, and hungry for the weak. And now, the galaxy was about to witness a catalyst that would reshape everything. The quiet before the storm. For days, sensors recorded an eerie silence along the Dominion's usual supply lines. No ships, no patrols. It was as if the enemy was holding its breath. I paced the command center late one night, watching the data streams flicker across the holoscreens. Kayla stood nearby, her brow furrowed in thought. "Something's coming," I said, breaking the silence. She nodded. "Too quiet. That never means good news." The mysterious signal. Then, without warning, a signal pierced the silence, a transmission unlike any we'd intercepted before. It was raw, fragmented, a jigsaw of encrypted data. But buried within the code was a message clear enough to chill us to the bone. Initiate Project Prometheus. Obliterate all resistance. Purge the galaxy. The Dominion wasn't just fighting to hold control anymore. They were gearing up for total annihilation. The name behind the threat. We scrambled to piece together what Project Prometheus was. Intelligence was scarce, but what we uncovered was terrifying. The Dominion had developed a weapon, not just a ship or a bomb, but a technological marvel of destruction. A weapon capable of wiping out entire colonies with a single strike. The rumors called it the Starfire Array, a network of orbital platforms designed to harness stellar energy and unleash it as a weapon of mass extinction. Racing against time. The stakes had never been higher. We couldn't wait for the Dominion to strike first. Kayla and I convened with Ryan and the Orion Collective's commanders. The fragile alliance now faced its greatest test. "We need to find the Starfire Array before it's operational," Kayla said. "If it goes online, there won't be anywhere safe." Ryan's voice was grim but resolute. "Then we destroy it, no matter the cost." Assembling the strike team. We formed a strike team, a mix of our best pilots, engineers, and tacticians, along with the collective stealth operatives. I would lead the mission. The burden of command felt heavier than ever. Before we departed, I walked through Fort Eden, feeling the eyes of my people on me, their hopes, fears, and trust all carried in their silent support. Into the unknown. Our ship slipped through the void, weaving past Dominion patrols with a combination of cunning and sheer luck. The coordinates from the intercepted signal led us to the edge of a dead star system, a place where no one dared linger. Sensors picked up the Starfire Array, an eerie constellation of massive platforms orbiting a star, pulsating with raw energy. The assault plan. The plan was simple but dangerous. We'd infiltrate the platforms, plant charges at critical nodes, and escape before the system self-destructed. Every second counted. The Dominion would respond quickly. Kayla and I shared a brief look, unspoken understanding passing between us. "This is it," I said. Into the fire. We deployed teams to separate platforms. The silence inside the stations was oppressive, broken only by the hum of energy coursing through the machinery. We moved with precision, sabotage, demolition, and extraction. But Dominion forces were waiting. The battle within. Chaos erupted as alarms blared and security drones swarmed. The collective stealth fighters engaged Dominion interceptors in a deadly dance across the stellar backdrop. I found myself in a firefight on a platform's control deck, pinned behind bulkheads as plasma bolts scorched the metal around me. Unexpected sacrifice. In the heat of battle, Mika, the former traitor turned ally, made a split-second decision that saved us all. She overloaded the power core, triggering a chain reaction that would collapse the platform. Her last words came over the comms, calm and resolute. "For humanity, for freedom." The escape. We barely made it out. The star system was engulfed in brilliant eruptions of light and fire as the Starfire array collapsed. The loss was heavy, but the threat was delayed, if not eliminated. The aftermath. Back on Fort Eden, the victory felt hollow. We'd stopped Project Prometheus, but at what cost? Mika's sacrifice was a stark reminder that the fight for survival demanded everything from us. A new resolve. The mission changed everything. It galvanized our people, but also deepened the resolve of the Dominion. The galaxy was slipping toward a war unlike any before. A war where the stakes were not just territory or power, but existence itself. Looking ahead, as I stood once again overlooking the stars, I realized the catalyst was not just the weapon, but us, humanity, our defiance, our resilience, and our unyielding will to fight against impossible odds. The war was far from over. But now, we had the spark to ignite the flame. The Starfire array's destruction was a victory, but a fragile one. In war, victories often come shadowed by new dangers, and Fort Eden was beginning to crack from within. As much as the Dominion threatened us from the outside, the real threat now seemed to be the fractures growing inside our fragile alliance. It was a slow burn at first, whispered doubts, sharp glances, missed meetings. But soon it became a fracture deep enough to threaten everything we'd fought for. The first signs. It started with small things. Delayed supply shipments from the Orion Collective. Communication blackouts at critical moments. The Collective's forces, once our staunchest allies, grew distant and defensive. Kayla noticed it early on. "There's something wrong," she said during a meeting in the command center. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her concern. I rubbed my tired eyes, scanning the faces around the table. "You think they're pulling away?" "Maybe," Kayla replied. "Or maybe they're hiding something." A rift forms. The tension wasn't just with the Collective. Among our own people, cracks were forming. The strain of continuous war, losses, and sacrifices was taking its toll. Morale was slipping. The idealism that had united us was fraying into fear and frustration. Some questioned my decisions. Others whispered about new leaders, people who promised easier paths or stronger weapons. Ryan was vocal about his frustrations with me. "We need to fight smarter, not harder," he said sharply during one heated briefing. "Your cautious approach is costing us time and lives." A dangerous divide. The war required unity, but instead, suspicion took root. One night, Kayla and I met privately in the strategy room. The glow of the holoscreens cast long shadows on the walls. "People are scared," she said. "They want answers. They want to know if we can win." "I don't have those answers," I admitted. "But we have to keep fighting for every person who believes in this cause." Kayla nodded. "We need something to hold on to. A rallying point. The spark of rebellion." That rallying point came sooner than I expected, but not from within Fort Eden. We received distress signals from several outer colonies that had declared independence from the Dominion years ago. They were calling for help, not just against Dominion forces, but against internal factions vying for power. It was a sign the Dominion's control was fracturing too. A risky gamble. The choice was clear. Send forces to support the colonies and possibly strengthen the alliance, or keep focus on Fort Eden's defenses. I pushed hard for the former. The rebellion could be the turning point, I argued in a council meeting. If we can unite these colonies with us, we could build an unstoppable force. Ryan was skeptical. Or we could spread ourselves too thin and lose everything. The debate was fierce. But eventually, we agreed on a limited strike team to aid the colonies. Betrayal from within. But while we argued over strategy, betrayal struck again. An informant warned us of a covert faction within Fort Eden. Soldiers and officers secretly aligned with the Dominion, feeding intelligence and sabotaging efforts. The news hit like a thunderclap, rooting out the traitors. This time, the hunt was harder. The traitors were embedded deeper, more cautious. We set up covert investigations, relying on Kayla's team of intelligence officers to dig into suspicious activity. Trust was now a precious commodity, and paranoia a constant companion. Personal doubts. The pressure was crushing. I found myself questioning my own judgments. Had I been too trusting? Too cautious? Could I still lead a fractured force against an enemy that seemed to anticipate our every move? Kayla's steadfastness. In those moments of doubt, Kayla's strength was my anchor. She reminded me of why we fought, of the humanity we were trying to preserve. Leadership isn't about being perfect, she told me during one long night. It's about standing up even when you're broken. A dangerous secret. Then came the hardest revelation yet. The investigations uncovered a plot to assassinate key leaders, including me. The conspirators were a shadow faction, believing that only a radical change in leadership could save us. Preparing for the storm, we tightened security, but the knowledge that the threat was so close cut deeper than any blade. The people I trusted most became both my shield and my doubt. The battle for unity. As the assault on the outer colonies began, so did the fight for Fort Eden's soul. The fractures were real, but so was our resolve. We had survived betrayal, loss, and fear. Now we had to survive ourselves. A new understanding. In the quiet moments, I realized something crucial. This war was bigger than any one leader, any one alliance. It was about the unbreakable spirit of humanity, the capacity to rise, to adapt, and to fight not just for survival, but for hope, the path forward. The fractures threatened to destroy us, but they also forced us to look inward, to rebuild from broken pieces stronger than before. And as we prepared for the next battle, I knew this was our true test. The moment had come, the culmination of everything we'd fought for, lost, and endured. The galaxy was burning, and so were we, but from the ashes, we would rise like a phoenix. This was no longer just a war of survival. It was a fight for the soul of humanity itself. The calm before the final storm. After the fractures within Fort Eden, the Alliance is shaken to their core. In the shadow of betrayal that lingered like a poison, we stood on the edge of a precipice. I remember standing on the observation deck, looking out over the stars scattered across the void like diamonds spilled across black velvet. The cold silence of space was a sharp contrast to the firestorm brewing in my mind. Kayla joined me silently, her gaze fixed on the distant systems we were about to defend or lose forever. We're not just fighting for territory anymore, she said quietly. We're fighting for who we are. I nodded. Then let's show them what humanity really means. Rallying the remnants. In the weeks before the final engagement, we worked tirelessly to rebuild our fractured coalition. The colonies we had helped rally came through. Even Ryan, who had been my harshest critic, stood beside me with renewed resolve. I realized something vital. It was not about who led, but what we led for. The stars themselves seemed to watch as we forged a new alliance, not out of convenience, but out of shared purpose. The Dominion's last gambit. But the Dominion was no fool. Their grip had loosened, but they weren't beaten yet. Intelligence reports revealed their desperate plan. A massive fleet, a final push to crush Fort Eden and the surrounding systems in one overwhelming strike. Their arrogance was palpable. They believed crushing US would restore their dominion over the galaxy. They were wrong. Preparing for battle, the fleet approached like a shadow engulfing the light. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was brought to bear. Kayla and I coordinated defenses, but this was more than strategy. It was a test of will. Our people were tired, broken, and scared, but they were also fierce. We knew the cost would be high, but surrender was never an option. The battle begins. The first salvo hit like thunder. Explosions rocked the orbital defenses. The sky above the planet lit up with fire and fury. I was in the command center, the nerve center of our resistance, directing the flow of battle. The roar of alarms mixed with the calm voices of the commanders. Orders were given, lives were lost, but we held our ground. The turning point. Midway through the battle, it became clear the Dominion had underestimated us. Their ships, though numerous, lacked cohesion. Their morale wavered as our counterattack struck true. The unity we'd rebuilt showed its power. Kayla led a daring strike squadron deep into the Dominion's flank, crippling their flagship. The tide turned. Sacrifice and resolve. But victory demanded sacrifice. Ryan's squadron was caught in a deadly crossfire. His last transmission was a message of defiance, urging us to hold the line. His loss hit us hard, but it steeled our resolve. We fought not just for survival, but for every fallen comrade. The final blow. In a desperate gambit, I led a boarding party onto the Dominion flagship. The corridors were cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the fire burning in our hearts. We faced overwhelming odds, but we had something the Dominion never understood: humanity's unbreakable spirit. The confrontation. I confronted the Dominion commander, a cold, calculating figure who saw us as nothing more than insects. He underestimated us. The fight was brutal, a clash of wills and steel. In the end, it was not technology or weapons that won, but something deeper: the refusal to give up, the will to protect what mattered. Aftermath and rebirth. With the Dominion flagship disabled and their fleet retreating, the battle was won. The cost was immense. Lives lost, systems devastated, but the spark of humanity had survived. Back on Fort Eden, as the dust settled, I looked around at the faces of my people, weary, scarred, but alive. A new dawn. The war had changed us all. It forced us to confront not just an enemy, but ourselves. The fractures we had feared became the foundations of a stronger, more resilient coalition. We were no longer scattered survivors. We were a force united by hope, by courage, and by the unyielding flame of humanity. The legacy. In the quiet moments after the war, I realized our story was just beginning. We were the phoenix, rising from the ashes of destruction, stronger and brighter. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity refused to be broken, and neither would I.